Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Luigi's Mansion. In the last part we continued our way through Area 3 catching Madame Clairvoyant in the process, and that allowed us to access rooms up here in the attic finally. And thus we're entering this room. Now notably, for one thing, in the hallway we were just, if you walk all the way in the opposite direction, you can actually see out the window in the front. You can see like the outer wall and all that. It's kind of neat. But notably, our boo radar is going nuts, but before we go after what's in here, we want to go around the edge of this specific balcony and water all the plants, because there are a lot here, and they give you a lot of gemstones, a lot of gold bars, a lot of money, period. Now, worth noting, if memory serves, you actively cannot enter this room unless you have 20 boos or above, which even with me going out of my way to get everything I can along the way thus far, it's pretty easy to have upwards of 20 as long as you actively go after them when you see a boo in a room. But I can imagine it's easy if you just try to bypass a lot of boos that you just accidentally don't have enough to access this room, period. So, a moment ago in one of the plants in the top right of the area, we actively got a red diamond. You might see that and think, ooh, like a silver diamond. That's gotta be really good for our end game money score. No, it's not. There's not too many of them in the game. They're effectively fool's diamonds. Each one of those is worth the exact same amount as a singular coin, unfortunately. With that said, they're still considered treasures, so I'm grabbing as many of them as I can because might as well, you know? Now, if you actively went to the opposite direction around the area, you would have noticed something about this room. There's a group of boos huddled in the center. That's going to be our actual destination here, but if we take a look in the bottom left as well, if you pair that information with the fact that we are in a room that has a pulsating thorny door, we're at our next boss fight already. Area 3. In my head, it's larger than it actually is. In my head, it's the largest area. Technically speaking, Area 4 is definitely the longest section of the game, but that's more for backtracking reasons than room amounts. Hello, boos.
That scaredy cat Luigi's made it this far. Oh, we're so frightened.
I guess it's our turn then.
Alright, boos, let's assume our real form. But first, how about give you a little scare?
My least favorite boss in the game, far and away, is Boolossus. Boolossus tries to body check you just constantly, but you can vacuum him to try and drag him around, and doing so you can bring him to the statues on either side to pop him into the 15 individual boos. Using the ice element that is present on those unicorn statues, you can freeze the boos and slowly capture them. The more of them you capture, the smaller Boolossus gets, and the easier it is to pull them around using just the poltergust. With that said, as you catch the boos, they start to get a little wiser to what you're trying to do and try to stay further away from you, so you need to sort of either just hit them from a distance with, say, the fully charged ice element shot by just pressing the analog trigger all the way in. But it's iffy on how well that works. This boss is all sorts of clunky, and I've just never liked it. You can bait the boos that are individualized into attacking you, and they try to charge at you, and you can sort of use that moment to try and grab them, but even then, that doesn't always work the greatest. Notably, there's actually a second way you can play this boss fight. Getting a little ahead of ourselves, there's a thing in the game that I've slightly foreshadowed already called the Hidden Mansion, which is effectively New Game Plus with some things changed around. It's even more changed around in the PAL release. And one of the things they actually changed there is they changed this boss fight to make Luigi ride on the poltergust like it's a vehicle. And it's faster, but it has less traction, which honestly for this fight makes it a little at least more interesting. With that said, it's still the Boolossus fight, so not very fun to do. With that said, due to the last couple boos especially being really wily with catching them, this has the potential to be the longest boss fight in the game, even more so than the final boss fight, to the point where I think I've at times been here upwards of 15-20 minutes just catching one boo and just getting super frustrated. I really, really don't like this fight. With that said, I don't think I read Boolossus' bio. When the shy, timid boos get together, their body and attitude get big. All caps. With that said, I'll give Boolossus this. I think this fight's a very good technical show-off, because if there's something I really like about the first Luigi's Mansion especially, it's how every ghost has a really good transparency and halo around them to make them feel ethereal. That also returns in the sequels, but because of how much more cartoony the ghosts feel, they also kind of cartoonify the lighting up for things like that a bit. Or at least they stylize it a little more. For when this came out, the ghosts in this look really, really good. Mind you, this is already just kind of an already really good looking game for the era. Especially for what was already probably a relatively small project that just changed a lot through development. Mind you, I guess it's just kind of a generalization. Most of the first and second party output from Nintendo on the GameCube and Wii took better advantage of the tech and hardware than a lot of the third party offerings on said consoles. Area 3's done, the balcony is lit up, and thus we get ourselves the Diamond Key. Also worth noting, our boo counter jumped from 24 to 35 because the 15 boos in that fight do actually count for the counter.
Luigi, can you hear me? Oh, what a relief. Now, why missed interrupted your signal? Ah, seem to have done some serious work there. Why don't you come on back to the lab? We can have dinner while we gaze at these ghost paintings. Tell I'll make an old family recipe. Pickled dandelions with barnacles and a diesel marinade.
Ew.
Good job, Luigi. You made it back in one piece. Looks like you got a vacuum full of ghosts there. What do you say we put them through the old ghost portrificationizer?
I mean, we've done it thus far. I don't know why you keep needing to tell us to do it. We feel like we kind of got the pattern down at this point, egad. Now, worth noting, there's examples of this on the cutting room floor, so I'll probably put a couple on screen right now. There are actually sprites for most of the individual portrait ghosts that would go into this machine in the game's code that went unused. They just go with this generic ghost shape during it otherwise. I guess it's just so they don't have to worry about having an individual animation for every single ghost sprite going through the machine for something that's on screen for, at most, 15 seconds. Also, I've always kind of found the order that boss ghosts come out of this in the frames weird, because it always starts with the end of area boss, which that makes sense. But then Madame Clairvoyant, okay, that's the one before that. Biff Atlas, we did him first, so that's not right. Alright, Slip, sure, that's after Biff Atlas, but then we needed the key from there to actually access the pool guy. So, I think it might technically be in some numerical order according to the frames and the numbers below them in the gallery, but I've never been too sure about it, honestly. Either way, let's take a look at our end of Area 3 totals. At this point, we've already caught most of the ghosts in the game. With that said, because there's a lot more optional ghosts appearing at this point in the game, potentially your totals might be radically different, if you're not going for them or not. And at this point, because we've started to get ourselves a lot of the higher ranked gemstones and diamonds more regularly, we're going to start ballooning in our total. And yeah, like I said, the red diamond, the fake diamond, only about as much as a single coin. 65,000, that I believe puts us in the range for C rank at the end of the game. And before we go into the mansion, once again, let's go take a look at the gallery so we can showcase the other paintings you could get for any of the given boss ghosts from that area in both versions, just so I can show them all off in the LP. Also, I've already probably done a text thing earlier in the LP talking about this a little more directly, but you might be noticing for each of these frames, I'm showcasing the gold, silver, and bronze for each of them in this game as well as the 3DS equivalents, but there's also a fourth 3DS frame? That's the platinum frame. The hidden mansion thing I mentioned during the Boolossus fight in the 3DS release, boss ghosts get increased HP, and you get a platinum frame from them in that if you take out 140 of their HP at a time and remain above 95 health in the case of boss ghosts. Definitely very tight to do because draining 100 health in one go is already kind of rough in some rooms, so doing 140 just is absurd in my eyes for some specific ones, but I at least appreciate them giving you an extra reward in some form for the extra difficulty of the Hidden Mansion in the 3DS release. Honestly, in retrospect, I'm kind of bummed when they ported Luigi's Mansion 2 to Switch. They didn't just do a Luigi's Mansion 1 and 2 collection for the 3DS releases and maybe give them some slight visual overhauling. As at least that would mean that there's also a way to play Luigi's Mansion 1 that's not just trapped to the 3DS nowadays. Because otherwise you have to track down a copy of either that or this version, and I'm not sure about the prices on those at the moment. Future me will probably chime in with those at the coming seconds, but yeah, that doesn't sound exactly appealing to me. Alright, gallery's taking a look out for now. It's time for our final trek into the mansion. Let's see how Area 4 goes. So, usually what I would do to start this section is to head back to the flower in the boneyard to water it once again. But I'm going to be over in that direction momentarily anyway for something else, so we're just going to speed our way up to the door that the key we got from Boolossus allows us to open, which is the one on the very western side of the balcony up here on the 3rd floor of the mansion. Let's open that door up and get on into Area 4 and probably eventually find the 4th of the 4 card suit keys, because we found the diamond, club, and heart. We're just missing the spade. Well, great. That's not good.
Criminy, what a calamity! The electricity's gone out! The lightning strike just now must have caused a blackout! I can't see anything in this blasted darkness. The ghosts will have the run of the place in the dark. Be careful, Luigi.
So, the entire mansion is powered down, and because of this, we actively can't get as much done as you'd think. With that said, at this point I usually head to the place we need to actually go to wrap this scenario up really quickly, because I know where I need to go. But I'm going to go out of my way to go into the area we just unlocked, because doing so will allow us to find a hint for where to go. Now, because the entire mansion is dark once again, ghosts will spawn in every room, but you can largely avoid them by at least staying close to the walls and vacuuming to keep yourself facing the single direction, because they'll only try to get behind you.
Hello? Hello? May I ask who's speaking, please?
It's Luigi.
Luigi? Huh, it's me, Toad. I don't know what I would have done if a ghost had answered. Anyway, we have a terrible problem. The lightning caused a blackout all over the house. What should we do? We're really afraid of the dark. Isn't there a way you can turn the lights back on? Huh? No, we don't know how to turn them on. We were hoping you'd know. Oh, me. But now that I think about it, I do remember seeing a large breaker switch somewhere in the basement.
Indeed we did, much earlier in the LP, even.
Hello?
Hello? Howdy? Hello?
Oh, sorry to surprise you, boy. It's me, Professor Egad. Sorry for disturbing you. I know I usually contact you by Game Boy Horror, but I thought I'd try this phone since you were in the room. You know that all the ghosts avoid the light and hide in the dark. But listen now, there's one ghost who fled from the gallery who only hides in the darkest places. His name is Uncle Grimly. If he is on the loose, then now may be your only chance to get him. Why don't you try looking for him before you get those lights back on? Might be wise. He's old for a ghost, but it's only made him more cautious. I do know, though, that for some reason he tends to prefer rooms with mirrors. Uh-oh, the ghost is starting to approach your position. Be careful, Luigi.
Now, at this point we have to fight some ghosts, of course, but those two hints might seem unrelated, but they completely are, because if you try to go back to the room with the breaker that we accessed earlier in the LP for a speedy spirit back in Area 2, the door there is locked now, so we need a key. Thus, Uncle Grimly is probably guarding that key, so we need to find him in order to actually progress onwards. With that said, because the lights have now been cut out in the mansion, there are not only new speedy spirits in old rooms that you couldn't get before, but also any golden mice from cheese that you might have missed throughout the game can now be obtained. With that said, speedy spirits that you could have obtained the first time but missed them, they do not respawn here. So the one in the bed at the twins room, I cannot get still. But the golden mouse from the cheese underneath Mr. Lug's chair in the dining room that I missed earlier, I can now get that. That is actually the reason I held off on going to water the plant over in the boneyard, because I knew I needed to head back there in that direction anyway, once the power was out. Because I had found out already that I had missed the Speedy Spirit at this exact moment, effectively, between the Area 3 and 4 recording sessions, pretty much. Despite all the rooms being dark again, though, the mansion is still overall safer than it could be, as, especially if you keep your back towards the wall at all times, most ghosts can't sneak up on you. And because it's only standard ghosts. Some rooms are arguably safer because there's no rough boss ghosts in the rooms anymore. So while this entire section actually weirdly scared me as a child, nowadays it's more just, I'm not even going to call it an inconvenience, just a brief scare moment, effectively. I could recommend potentially using mirrors around here just to facilitate your speeding backtrack back to the foyer, but it doesn't really matter. While we will be hitting up the kitchen chain of rooms in a moment, my first destination here is actually the conservatory again, as one of the new speedy spirits has spawned in this room. In specific, we need to go investigate the piano bench that Melody was sitting on once upon a time. I think I also technically missed some money in here earlier that I could grab now, but in the case I missed money and I still haven't gotten it yet, I do one last lap around the mansion right before the end of the game just to get as much money as I can. And thankfully, because the counters are always on screen, you'll be able to tell exactly when I grab more money, in the case an item drops them that it didn't before. I think rooms in this section do have a set amount of ghosts, by the way. They don't spawn quite infinitely unless it's one of the main hallways, which can be pretty handy when it comes to just trying to get through things, in the case you're just like, okay, I need to take care of these guys before I grab this thing. But also it just means in the case you're trying to take things a little more methodically and make sure you've grabbed everything you can take this moment to actively do that. Still safer to wait until the power's back on, because then ghosts don't spawn in those rooms at all, but every bit matters, I suppose. This section always takes me back to a very specific part of my youth, though, because I was afraid of the dark for years growing up, to the point where I had a nightlight, but not like the usual little cutesy one. No, me and my brother both got these colored light bulb lamps that sat in our rooms that had, like, weird gel spikes on them that I can only describe as, imagine Cloud's hair if it was made of a gel-like substance in the color of Guy Fieri's frosted tips, effectively. And I remember it was blue, which in retrospect, as I've gotten older, makes me realize that's probably why I had such a bad time sleeping in that specific period of my life, considering blue light really helps you stay awake. Meanwhile, my brother with his red lamp had the right idea. So I'm not sure if it's just due to my diet, or the autism, or the ADHD, or what, but I've always just kind of had a rough time sleeping in my life, at least getting to sleep. Once I'm there, I'm really good at staying there, but, you know. I remember it distinctly as well, especially after I saw certain horror trailers before I became a horror buff. I actually needed to start listening to music before I went to sleep, and that just never really went away. I still semi-regularly make CDs to put into my stereo to listen to while I sleep. Alright, now that we're back here in the boneyard, we can water the flower one more time and get our ultimate reward for this effectively game-long mini-quest. For watering the plant one more time, we're going to get a good chunk of change out of it. But notably, one of that piece of chunk of change is one of 2 gold diamonds in the game. This is the most expensive item compared to any other pickup in the game at a whopping 20 million G per one of those. Meaning, in most cases, you'll move up a solid rank, maybe even 2 depending on your cash, just by getting one of those. With that sense, since there's only 2, you kind of almost require getting both for the highest rank, especially in the 3DS release as well as in the PAL releases. A great boon all the same, so grab those while you can. Next up, I want to head back to the hidden room that we explored near where we fought Shivers, as at this point there's now a speedy spirit in that room. With that said, I am going back really quick to get a fire element because I'm going to need that in the case I run into any ghosts that actually require it. Once we get into the hidden room, my goal is going to be to investigate the chest on the far right of the room, as that's where the new speedy spirit's located. With that said, you're going to need to deal with some actual ghosts in here to begin with, and hey, the fire makes that go by pretty easily. Right there is one of the trickier formations of enemies too. Like I said earlier, the ground-pounding blue ghosts really do rely on having other ghosts around you to try and just force you into a position where you'll get hit by the shockwave, and the grabbing ghosts are incredibly effective at that. Also, I don't think I mentioned it yet, the yellow bats themselves are interesting enemies where they actively won't attack you unless you actively vacuum near them. With that said, as long as you're facing where they're going to come from, you'll vacuum them all in one go anyway. Low on health, which is a little worrisome, but I'll have ways around it. Oh, also, since I haven't talked about it yet, I believe, you might think a clever idea to capture a speedy spirit is to use an element on them to drain their health. If you kill a speedy spirit by burning them, freezing them, or drowning them to death, or re-death, you actually get no money from it, so that's a horrible idea. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 9, we're hopefully going to get the power back on after taking on Uncle Grimly. See you guys then.